Hey, so it occurred to me that because we've been doing other kinds of reviews the last few months and we haven't been doing our usual monthly wrap ups, we actually forgot to do all the books that we had read as part of Juan's Visions of the Month. So I figured maybe today that's what we could do. We could talk about those books and almost kind of like a Visions of the Month wrap up. Yeah, I know it seems kind of like that, but Juan doesn't really call it a book club. He calls it Visions of the Month. So I feel like maybe we should just kind of keep referring to it as that. Yeah, I know. I realize we read a lot of books, but like I said, Juan has pretty much resisted the term book club. So I think we should really respect his position on it and just keep referring to it as Visions of the Month. Yeah, I understand. I know we each month pick a book, and then all talk about that book, and that's kind of exactly what you do in a book club. But again, he it's his thing, and I think we should. He calls it Visions of the Month, and so I think we should probably just stick with that. Yeah, I agree. We do it every month, which again is exactly what you do in a book club. But I just really think we should just respect Juan's position and just not call it a book club and just stick with the term Visions of the Month. Okay, why don't we go ahead and review the books that we read as part of Juan's book club? Hi everyone, it's Dave and Olive. Thanks for joining us here at Book Blather, where we try to have a little fun while we talk about the books we're reading to help spread the joy of reading. So today we're having a little fun at the expense of our dear friend Juan, who, contrary to the thumbnail, is actually one of the kindest human beings you'll ever meet. In addition to having a great channel over Plagued by Visions, he's also generous enough to manage an entire community over in Discord, and is kind enough to also run a book club for us all to read and discuss some of the same books each month. So, as we just mentioned, since the last couple months we didn't do our usual monthly wrap ups, we were doing different things. We actually missed reviewing a few books, and they all just happened to be the books that we had read for Juan's monthly Visions of the Month group read. So, that's what we were going to talk about today. So we'll jump right into it. The first book that we did was in August, and that's the one that we already did review. That was Bad Ronald by Jack Vance. That was a great book. We already reviewed that though, so we'll link that at the end if you want to go watch that review. The next book was in September. And in September, we read The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. This was originally published in 1986. So this is a horror novella, and this was originally published in 86 as part of Night Visions, which was an anthology of short horror fiction. It was a series of books, and was an anthology of short horror fiction. And this was in Night Visions 3, which was actually edited by George R. R. Martin. And it served as the basis for the very well-known movie Hellraiser, which came out the following year in 1987. There are some differences between the Hellbound Heart and Hellraiser, but almost all the essential stuff is the same. There's some minor differences, and like one of the characters, a somewhat major character, is the daughter in one and an admirer in the other. But for all intents and purposes, all the basics of the two stories are the same. And because of the success of the movie, then the Hellbound Heart was republished in 1991 as a standalone novel. Here's a copy of it right here. And so, I'm sure most people know the story or the basics of the story because the movie is so popular. But for those that don't, the Hellbound Heart basically follows. There's two really main characters, which is one is Frank, who is basically a not a very nice person, sadomasochist, and the other is his brother's wife, Linda, who is also not a very nice person that really falls for Frank. And Frank, as I said, is a sadomasochist that's on this mission to experience every hedonistic pleasure that he possibly can. And when he finally reaches the culmination of that and is still looking for more, he goes on the hunt for this this thing called the Le Marchand box. And I'm probably supposed to say that with some kind of accent. But this is a puzzle box that will lead to alternate dimension, where you can apparently experience even greater pleasure. And so he does this, and he ends up opening the passage, this other dimension, and encounters the Cenobites, or the Cenobites. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it. But these are actually demonic people that have gone just so far to the extreme that they don't even notice any difference between pain and pleasure anymore. So Frank gets pulled into this world, and it, of course, is not what he was expecting. And so I don't want to say too much about the story. For those that don't know, I feel like it's hard to spoil because most people probably already know the story. But basically, something happens, and Frank sort of partially comes back, but is in a very bad state. And Linda, who's infatuated with him and not such a nice person herself, helps him to engage in these unsavory activities to help bring him back, basically. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Leave some mystery for those that don't already know the full story. And basically, it's not terribly deep, but it's it's a good horror novella. It's definitely creepy and scary, and it's relatively quick read. And it's basically just about what happens when you have people that are willing to do anything to satisfy their own desires without caring how they affect other people. So that's it. Like I said, not a terribly deep book, but it's definitely worth reading if you like horror novellas. Now, the next month was October, and there was actually two books this month which we actually did not get to read because we were doing a separate Halloween series. But this was The Case Against Satan by Ray Russell and The Fog by James Herbert. We're hoping to read those in the future, but just didn't have a chance to yet. So the next one was in November, and this was The Resurrectionist by Rath James White. This was originally published in 2009, but then was republished in 2014. So if you are going to pick up this book, make sure you pick up this version, which was when it was republished in 2014, not the older version that was published in 2009. In 2014, when this was republished, White added what he called an epilogue at the end. But it's really more than an epilogue. It's really a final major chapter. It completely changes how the book wraps up. It's a completely different book without it, and it is a really, really good ending for several different reasons. This book also, it was the basis for a movie that came out in 2014 called Come Back to Me. We have not watched that, so we don't know how close. I think it was not a very well-received movie. Don't know how closely it follows the book. I think not super close, but I'm not really sure about that, so don't take my word on it. But what the book was about was an individual, Dale, who has you see him first in the book as a child who witnesses a very violent experience, and then you see him jumps into in the future. You see him as an adult, and he has the uncanny ability to resurrect people that have died without them having any recollection of their death. And so the book really follows the main character, Sarah, and her husband, Josh. And, they live in this house, and one day Dale moves in across the street, and he becomes infatuated with Sarah, and he ends up doing this book is extreme horror, so it's not for the faint of heart, and basically it follows the story of Sarah starting to wake up, having these strange feelings, the next morning, and remembering some things that seem like just night terrors, or nightmares that she's had, but she has weird feelings about it, and then starts noticing some strange things like blood on the sheets and bleach on the rug, and so of course it's a story about this Dale who has a very unusual perspective of what's acceptable in view of his unusual power, and he commits, because he's infatuated with Sarah, commits these just unspeakable atrocities on them on a regular basis, that they then have no recollection of. And so I won't say too much more than that, because that's pretty much on the jacket, but that's already sort of a little spoilery. So but it's really, really good. Like I said, the main character is Sarah, who is presented as is a very strong woman, both physically, but also in terms of her confidence and her sexuality. And then it really undergoes this really unique situation where that's able to be taken away from somebody like that, and it really explores this sort of just really unusual sense of trauma, where you have where you sort of know things have happened and know things are going to happen, but you have no recollection of them or what they're like. Very, very unique concept, and it was really an addictive thrill ride. It was really enjoyed this book. Like I said, it's probably not going to be for everybody because it was so rough, but I thought it was really good in terms of how addictive it was, and also in terms of a number of the things that actually got explored in there. And so I don't want to say any more than that, but this is definitely the most, we haven't, there are plenty of disturbing books out there that we haven't read yet. I will say that this is definitely the most disturbing book that I ever read, but it, like I said, it was really, really enjoyable and really, really good, I thought, if you can handle that sort of subject matter. Okay, and the last book was in December, and this was The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich. And this was published in 2012, and it was actually the winner of the National Book Award. Now, what this book was about was, this was actually, I think it's supposed to be, it's not actually part of a trilogy, but it's one of 3 books, I guess, in this area called I think she calls the Justice Trilogy, I think is what it was called. And but you don't need to read any other books. The story is set on an Indian reservation and follows this Native American tribe dealing with the fallout from a crime that happens. Basically, it's told from this perspective of Joe, who is a 13-year-old boy, and he and his father are doing, in the beginning of the book, he and his father are outside doing some gardening, I believe, if I recall. And they realize his mother is late, and it turns out his mother is late because she has been subjected to a brutal attack. And so there's a few different things that are happening in this story. We see the mother fall into this extended depression, and she is not able to talk about what happened. And the father is a tribal judge, and so he is trying to deal with it, from the perspective of the law. And Joe, the son, who's very frustrated with the inability to make any advances in that area, decides to take it upon himself, him and his friends, to try to get to the bottom of this and what happened, and find some justice. And it explores a few different things. It's a part of coming of age story for Joe and his band of friends, part of a story about social injustice, and women, and particularly Native American women, that are subjected to these crimes and usually do not find any justice. And here there are complications because they don't know exactly what. She doesn't have a specific recollection of exactly. It occurs by this roundhouse, but she doesn't know exactly where because she couldn't see, and so they don't know what land, tribal land, federal land. They don't know exactly where it occurred and what laws apply. We didn't love the book, and though it explored these different things, I don't think it really explored any of them too well. The social injustice side, I think it kind of fell a little. I don't really feel it accomplished very much in terms of speaking to those issues, and the coming of age story was kind of a little odd, and like the ending was, it was horrible. I didn't even understand why it would end that way. It didn't seem to have any purpose, I think it just that these different kind of storylines just really didn't come together that well. So obviously a lot of people disagree with us. I mean, this is a popular author. She's written I think like 14 books, a lot of books, 11, a lot of books, and it won the National Book Award. So obviously a lot of people like it, but it just really was. I mean, it was well written mechanically, but I just felt it didn't really come together too well, and really didn't deliver too well on, I think, the different things it was trying to talk about. So it wasn't horrible, but we didn't think it was great. It was a little bit of a slog, and we personally wouldn't recommend it for people that have similar tastes as us. Okay, so that does it. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks for Juan for picking these books, most of which we really did enjoy. If you wanted to watch the review of Bad Ronald, I'll link that in the card so you can watch that next. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you get notified the next time Olive says it's okay to upload another video. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.